60 Minutes works out of a separate building than the rest of CBS News. And for a long time, they've sort of been untouchable. Part of that is because it's been a successful show. It's CBS's signature show. There are a lot of famous people attached to it. We didn't mention this, but Anderson Cooper announced his departure earlier this year. That was another big exit. And Bari came in and wasn't precious about it and wanted to make some changes to adapt the program to the digital age, I imagine, what she's trying to do to the rest of CBS News. And I think you could argue that that's not unreasonable.
The biggest media story of 2026 has been everything that's going on at CBS and at 60 Minutes. Joining us today will be Isabella Simonetti, Wall Street Journal media reporter who's covered this story extensively. She joins us coming up.
From the worldwide leader in journalism, truth, and democracy, this is the Poynter Report Podcast, a joint production between the Poynter Institute and the Department of Journalism and Digital Communication at the University of South Florida, St. Petersburg. Now here's your host from the Poynter Institute, Tom Jones.
All right, Isabella, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
I'm a really big fan of your work. I think you do a terrific job. I'm linking to your stories all the time in my newsletter. And I want to start off by talking about the most recent story that I linked to. We're recording this on June 25th. So just a few days ago, you had a terrific story on Tony Dokoupil, who is the anchor of the CBS Evening News. I guess relatively 6 months, I guess so, he's been in. I mean, in a lot of ways, he's sort of become the public face of the network news division, don't you think?
Yeah, I think, we say this in the story, but he's sort of become the involuntary poster boy of Bari Weiss's takeover of CBS News. I think, other than Matt Gutman, Tony was her first really big hire. So what he does for at least the public and media watchers, people are looking to read the tea leaves for what that means about her strategy and what she wants to do.
Yeah, I thought you did a really good job. What I really liked about your stories, you sort of encompassed everything that's happened, not just the good, but also the bad. I mean, he had a rocky start. There's been some rocky moments during his first 6 months. And as you mentioned, he was like really the first big move that Bari Weiss made as the controversial new editor-in-chief. And two things jumped out at me about your conversation with Tony. First one was with Bari Weiss on the kind of influence she may or may not have on the evening news. What did Tony Dokoupil tell you about how much influence Bari Weiss has or doesn't have on the evening news broadcast?
Sure. I mean, obviously, Bari's the editor-in-chief of CBS News, but I thought Tony's quote was pretty interesting, where he said something along the lines of, Bari's the editor-in-chief of CBS. She runs a 9 a.m. meeting and she has a lot of ideas. When we like the ideas, we take them, and when we don't, we don't. And I kind of read that as putting a little bit of distance between him and her. I don't know what you thought.
No, that's exactly the way I took it as well. Yeah. I mean, I kind of felt like, we heard stories like the first week, like she was heavily involved with the newscast, right?
For sure. I mean, and I think we reported that in the piece. She and others were very involved. And I think, she still continues to be involved. It's one of the biggest shows on CBS News. But she was making changes to the script, was heavily involved in the launch, which was pretty quick for a new show with a new anchor. And the way he put it, it seemed like, maybe she's stepped back a little bit.
The other part that really stunned me was Tony Dokoupil told you he had never met even David Ellison, who is the CEO of Paramount, which owns CBS News, obviously. And not only had he never met him, he never sent any suggestions about what the newscast should or shouldn't have. How surprised were you by that? I mean, we're talking about maybe, as you mentioned, the de facto poster boy of CBS News, and he has yet to talk to the president or the CEO of the whole company.
Right. I mean, I was surprised and I wasn't surprised. David Ellison's the CEO of Paramount and affiliated with, the parent of CBS News. So I don't know. It wasn't super shocking to me. What I thought was more interesting was that David Ellison had this dinner back in April honoring the Trump White House in Washington, which Bari attended, as well as others from CBS News. and Tony was invited but declined to attend. I thought that was pretty interesting.
I thought that was a really smart move by him as well, don't you think? Like to sort of at least show some distance between, because it's not unusual for editors or whatever to meet with people like Trump. I'm sure the editor of the New York Times at some point, I know Dean Baquet at some times, or Matt Murray or whatever. I'm assuming at some point big editors have met. I don't know if Emma Tucker's ever met with Trump, but it's not unusual for that to happen. But to have somebody like Dokoupil, I don't know. I thought it was a good move on his part not to go.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's interesting. You could argue that this is access to the president, which is arguably the most important person that we cover, and you don't want to give that up. At the same time, I think some people read the language of the invitation, which was honoring the Trump White House, as skewed in a way that might make someone uncomfortable.
One of the things, Bari Weiss gets a lot of criticism. Some of it deserved, maybe some of it pretty unfair. I think she's made some mistakes in terms of how she's handled some of the moves there. But I'll say this, Isabella, CBS had to do something, doesn't they? I mean, you're talking about a network that's in third place in most areas, evening news, morning show. I kind of admire the fact that she's trying something. I mean, do you get the sense that that was sort of the mandate she had going in? Like, hey, status quo is not necessarily working here. We do need to change some things up.
Sure. I mean, I think David Ellison brought her in to blow things up, to use one of her favorite phrases, I want to blow this up. And they both talked about in an interview with the Journal at the time she was hired, how, 70% of people don't trust the press, and we need to cater to people in America who are center right and center left, and something needs to change. I mean, it's not like like you said, CBS News is in third place. CBS Evening News is in third place. The morning show's in third place. So, in the digital era specifically, something needs to change. And Bari had success with the free press, and I think came in with a mandate to shake things up.
The thing that I really, and I've been pretty ambivalent about Tony Dokoupil. I thought he got off to a rough start. And I think maybe like a lot of people I went in was sort of like, not sure this is going to work. And I think we were ready to pounce. A lot of us in the media, certainly media critics, were ready to pounce on him. But he had a couple of missteps. That's another thing. Again, I love this about your story. Like, you didn't shy away from, he had the incident first week where they had honored Marco Rubio, like, let's salute the Florida man. There was the visa screw up where he wasn't able to get in to China while President Trump had gone there. And he didn't shy away from any of that. I was impressed with his accountability. What did you make of that? Or like, how was he when you asked him about those topics?
It seemed like Tony really wanted the chance to respond to some of the early blunders that have been memorialized in the press. And he took that opportunity. He owned some of them, like the Marco Rubio thing, for example. He said something along the lines of, I could have done that on the morning show. I intended for it to be a joke. I wouldn't do it again. People read it not the way that I was intending it to be delivered. The visa thing, I thought, was pretty stunning. His response was just, it was a mistake. It was all of our mistake. I'm not going to pretend like it was our first choice. So, I think if you're reading that, he's taking accountability for some of the things that have gone wrong on his show, and you got to respect that.
The other issue, to something that you've written a lot about lately, is what's going on at 60 Minutes. Bari Weiss fired the executive producer, Tanya Simon. She brought in Nick Bilton, who doesn't really have a whole lot of TV news experience, or really any at all. Some correspondents have been fired. Sharon Alfonsi was fired. Cecilia Vega, Anderson Cooper had quit. That led to this big, nasty meeting between Scott Pelley and Nick Bilton. Then it led to Scott Pelley being fired. You did a video for the Wall Street Journal website that I thought brought up a really important point. We were just talking a moment ago about how, CBS Evening News is in trouble, or compared to the other, in third place. The morning show's in third place. 60 Minutes is not in trouble. Like, they're doing well. As you mentioned in the video that you did, I think their viewership was up 9%. What sense do you get, and what's been the reaction inside the network for why you're making massive changes to this gold standard of news journalism, news journalism, a show that really doesn't need a big shakeup, you wouldn't think.
I wish I had an answer to that question because I would write more stories about it. A lot of people are interested to know. I think the answer is twofold. As you said, part of why the changes have been so controversial are because one, 60 Minutes is the signature program of CBS News, has a lot of high profile correspondents attached to it, fewer now, and it's doing well. The ratings were up compared to other properties at CBS where that's not the case. However, I think there was an incident in December where Bari opted to hold a segment of Sharon Alfonsi's about CCOT, and Sharon then in turn called that decision political, and it prompted this whole political debate between Bari and Sharon that spilled into the public view. For me, that was sort of the beginning of the public tumult between the 60 Minutes staff and Bari, even if there were things going on behind the scenes before that, or she already had plans in the works before that. But there have been issues between Bari and 60 Minutes since December. And that was really the first big scandal of her tenure. Other than that, people were like, poking fun at some of her catchphrases, like, let's do the effing news and I want to blow this up. But there was nothing other than that. This is the first big thing that I remember. And then Scott Pelley in the meeting with Nick Bilton, which was then leaked to the press, accused her of murdering 60 Minutes. And then obviously there was a meeting between Bari and Tom Sabrowski, the president of CBS News, and Nick Bilton and Scott that turned sour, and he was fired. So I don't know if that answers your question, because I don't have an answer, but that's sort of my analysis of the situation.
And I don't know that you'll have an answer to this either, but I do wonder, and I'm going to ask you to speculate, and if you can, I understand completely. I wonder how much of the criticism coming from 60 Minutes. Again, I'm just asking this question. I sound like Tucker Carlson all of a sudden. I'm just asking. But I wonder how much of it is like legitimate complaints from inside of 60 Minutes, and how much it is. This is the first time that maybe they don't have the complete autonomy that they've always had as a TV show. I mean, I get the impression that 60 Minutes is left alone by people outside of 60 Minutes. And this, for the first time, they're getting some pushback from leadership like, hey, I don't know that this story is ready. Now, again, I don't know that Bari Weiss handled it the right way. And I'm sure there are people who work at 60 Minutes who might listen to this and say, you have no idea what's going on. But I do wonder, this is such a legacy show program that's probably used to getting its way a lot of the time. You know what I'm saying?
100%. I mean, I don't know if you know this. I assume you do. 60 Minutes works out of a separate building than the rest of CBS News. And for a long time, they've sort of been untouchable. Part of that is because it's been a successful show. It's CBS's signature show. There are a lot of famous people attached to it. We didn't mention this, but Anderson Cooper announced his departure earlier this year. That was another big exit. And Bari came in and wasn't precious about it and wanted to make some changes to adapt the program to the digital age, I imagine, what she's trying to do to the rest of CBS News. And I think you could argue that that's not unreasonable. But then some of the correspondents at 60 Minutes have accused her in turn of editorial interference. What exactly they mean by that, I'm not 100% sure, but there's obviously this high stakes Paramount Warner Brothers deal that required regulatory approval, that raises a lot of questions about and puts a spotlight on her and everything that CBS News does. And she responded to those allegations in my story and said, what people are calling editorial interference is in reality the job of an editor-in-chief, to your point.
Right. Look, Scott Pelley made some very serious charges in his comments to the New York Times. And so, that I think that's the thing that has a lot of people wondering like exactly what's going on there. Before I get off 60 Minutes, I did want to ask you, I mean, they're down to 3 correspondents at the moment, right? Like I said, as we record this on June 25th, Leslie Stahl, Bill Whitaker, John Wertheim. That's it. I mean, I imagine that Nora O'Donnell can occasionally come in and do a story if they need her to, or if they have to throw Margaret Brennan or somebody else. They have people, they have journalists at CBS News, but I mean, September's coming fast. I mean, for a news program like 60 Minutes, where are they? Do you have any sense where they are right now as a news program? Are they going to be ready to go mid-September?
I think Nick Bilton is working on that. And, I assume that there are stories in the works and eventually they want to recruit more people. But also you got to understand, like, the deal hasn't gone through. Yeah, it just received regulatory approval from the Justice Department, which cleared the deal. But I think they're still waiting on the European regulators, and I think there are a lot of things that will be up in the air until the deal goes through. Because then CNN comes into the fold.
Right. Yeah. Well, let's take a quick break. When we come back, I do want to ask you about Paramount buying Warner Brothers Discovery, what this all means for CNN. We'll talk about that in a moment. A quick reminder to everybody, if you like this conversations about the media, please give us an excellent rating if you're watching on YouTube. If you're traveling, working out, going on a walk or whatever, you can listen to us on Apple, on Google, Spotify. We appreciate listening. Don't forget that excellent rating. We'll be right back.
Take your career to the next level. The University of South Florida, St. Petersburg is offering a master's degree in digital journalism and design. Do the entire program from home and complete it in as little as 1 year. For more information, email journalism@usf.edu or call 727-873-4544. The cost is reasonable. The experience is invaluable.
Isabella, we just talked about this before the break, the big move, obviously Paramount buying Warner Brothers Discovery. They're in the final stages of everything going through. Paramount's owned by David Ellison, his father, Larry Ellison. The Wall Street Journal had a huge story the other day about how David Ellison has given roughly $45 million to a political nonprofit group that supported Trump's election efforts in 2024. More recently, they've given him millions of dollars more to groups that support Trump in the election. So obviously there's a relationship there between the Ellisons and Trump. Trump administration had to sign off on the Paramount WBD deal. And then eventually they're going to take over CNN if this all goes through. Any sense now of what this means for CNN, or are we all just speculating until they actually do it?
I think we're all just speculating. I can name all the questions I want the answers to, which are, what role is Bari going to have? Is she going to oversee both? Will they bring in someone else? Will Mark Thompson, the CEO of CNN right now, stay? I think Jerry Cardinale, who is on the board of Paramount, was out there yesterday. I saw this reported on that, saying that he thought Mark Thompson was a great executive. And which I thought was interesting given all that's gone on with Bari. And I think people are also curious, they'll probably have to cut jobs in some way. There are probably some redundancies between CBS and CNN. How intertwined will the two newsrooms be? But I think, the Ellisons have a lot of other priorities too. And obviously this is something that they'll need to get to, but the deal is still awaiting approval from European regulators, I believe.
Yeah. I mean, I think you hit on a really smart point there, Isabella. I think they have so much invested in this in terms of like movies and streaming and that sort of thing. CNN's on their list of things to get to, but I'm not sure it's on the first page of things they're going to get to. I mean, do you get that sense?
And David Ellison's a movie guy, right? Like he Top Gun, and he loves the movies. He's not a news guy. So obviously the news is important, and he spent time thinking about bringing in Bari to run CBS News. But maybe while CBS and CNN are really interesting to us and consumers of our content, it might not be priority number one for the Ellison family.
I think it's a big job. Boy, I think it's hard enough to run a network news. I can't imagine running two network news. I mean, is there anything like that you can think of? I mean, I guess there were people at times that oversaw everything that NBC and MS and the former MSNBC, but I mean, something like this, I mean, CBS and CNN, it just seems like a big job.
It would be. I think the NBC parallel that you drew is the closest one that I can think of. And then even then it got messy at times. I don't know if you remember the whole Ronna McDaniel
Oh yeah.
controversy. So there can be tensions between the two networks under the same umbrella too, if they have different editorial priorities or lenses. So it would be a huge job to run both, even if you're just running the editorial operations of both and someone else is running the business. That those are huge newsrooms.
Just a complete guess on your part, and I'm not going to hold you to this. Like, if we were to see if this all goes through and CBS Paramount takes over CNN ultimately, like when would this all happen? Like, when would we start to see, like, okay, CBS and CNN are kind of the same company now? Are we talking about end of the year, late, longer? Any sense at all?
Depends on when the deal goes through, but I think pretty soon after they'll have to figure out what they're going to do with both networks, I would imagine.
Right.
I mean, like I said, if there are concrete plans in the work or a concrete vision over how they will come together, and we don't know the extent to which they'll be merged either. They could stay more separate than people think, but I don't know.
Yeah. Before I let you go, I did want to talk about the Murdochs, but not your ultimate boss, Rupert, who owns Fox News, the Wall Street Journal, among other media outlets. But I want to ask you about James. His younger is, I guess it was fair to say, more liberal son. He's shown that his politics really don't line up with the rest of his family, or at least his dad and his older brother. He recently bought Vox Media's New York Magazine and the Vox News site and the Vox Media podcast network. You have any sense for what James' ultimate plans are as far as like being a media mogul? Is this it for him? Does he want to expand it? Any sense at all about what James Murdoch's media empire looks like in the future?
I don't know. I thought it was an interesting story. I covered it a little bit after the sale was announced to James. I think New York Magazine is a really interesting property. They've had some pretty splashy stories in the last year that have caught the cultural or sort of captivated the cultural cachet, so to speak. Like I feel like they have these zeitgeisty stories that do very well, and their podcast network is huge. I've written a lot about the age of the podcast influencer, and they've taken on some new shows. So I think it's an interesting deal. It's a very different portfolio of media properties than what's under our umbrella, I would say. But that's all I know. I can't really speak to his intentions with what he wants to do and other things he might be looking at.
Isabella Simonetti, I'll tell you, you and your colleagues at the Wall Street Journal do a terrific job covering the media. Every day I pick up the journal and I'm like, damn it, why didn't I have that story? That's good stuff. So if you have a chance, go back
music
and read.
To our ears.
What's that?
Thank you. I said music to our ears. Thank you.
No, you guys do a terrific job. Thanks so much for joining us. You have to come back. I'm sure you'll have another terrific story coming up soon, and would love to talk to you about that as well. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
Thanks everybody for listening and watching. A reminder that we have now 5 seasons of the Poynter Report podcast now available for you anytime. You can watch seasons 3, 4, and 5 on YouTube and listen to any season on Apple, Spotify, Google. Check out past episodes with guests such as Jen Psaki, Chuck Todd, Tom Yamas, many, many more. We're on our summer schedule, so a new episode comes out every 3 weeks. We'll see you next time on the Poynter Report podcast.
Thank you for listening to the Poynter Report podcast. The views and opinions of this episode's guest and the host are not associated with nor reflect those of the University of South Florida. The podcast is produced by the Department of Journalism and Digital Communication at the University of South Florida, St. Petersburg. Executive producers are Elliot Weiser and Ren LaForm. Our producers are Tom Jones and Stephanie Broughton. And our director is Christopher Campbell. And a special thank you to Neil Brown and Dr. Mark Walton.